When my husband passed away, I didn't cry the way everyone expected me to. I remember standing by the window that morning, holding his old coffee mug, still half full from the night before. The house was quiet, too quiet, and yet, somewhere deep inside, there was this calm. Not peace exactly, more like the silence after a storm that's taken everything with it. We had been married for 42 years. We raised 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter. I thought I knew them. I thought we were close. But grief has a strange way of showing you who really stands beside you when the ground gives way. On the day we buried their father, I stood alone beside the casket. The cold air touched my cheeks like tiny knives, and I looked around, waiting. I thought maybe one of them would come and hold my hand, but no one did. Later that night when I came home, the house was still dark, and then my phone buzzed. It was a video sent accidentally by my eldest son. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but as I pressed play, I saw them, all 3 of my children, laughing, music playing in the background, balloons, drinks, a party, on the same night their father was being buried. I watched that video twice, maybe 3 times before I realized I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I just felt empty. Maybe they didn't mean harm. Maybe they thought they were celebrating his life. Or maybe they just didn't feel what I felt anymore. Maybe somewhere along the way I had lost them, the same way I lost him. That night I sat alone at our kitchen table, the same one where we used to eat Sunday breakfast together, the same table where my children once fought over the last pancake and my husband would pretend to be the judge, deciding fairly. The memories came back like soft waves, and in that quiet I did something unexpected. I reached for the phone, and I made a call. One call that would change everything, not just for me, but for all of us. It's strange how silence can feel heavier than noise. After that night, I kept thinking about the kind of family we used to be. Before life got busy, before the world pulled my children in different directions. I remember when the kids were little, our house was never quiet. There were always toys scattered on the floor, cartoons playing too loud, someone crying, someone laughing. The walls had scribbles that never quite came off, and the refrigerator door was covered with drawings, magnets, and crooked report cards. My husband, Mark, used to come home tired but smiling. He'd hang his jacket on the same chair, loosen his tie, and say, "Smells good, Ann. What's for dinner?" And I'd tease him, "The same thing you had yesterday and the day before, leftovers and love." He'd laugh, kiss my forehead, and help me set the table. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. Those were the days when love was loud, when you didn't have to look for it because it was everywhere. As the years passed, the laughter softened. The kids grew up. Life stretched us in ways I wasn't ready for. Our eldest, David, was the responsible one. Always serious, always thinking about the future. He studied business and took after his father. Practical, disciplined, sometimes too much so. He was the kind of son who remembered everyone's birthdays but never stayed long enough to cut the cake. Then there was Emily, our middle child. She had my heart. Gentle, creative, always humming to herself. She could make anything beautiful. Old jars, broken lamps, even wilted flowers. She used to sit beside me in the garden, planting little seeds and whispering, "Grow, little one, grow." And somehow everything she touched did. And then there was Ryan, our youngest, the wild one, the one who made us laugh even when we didn't want to. He was his father's shadow. They'd spend weekends fixing the old car, covered in grease but grinning like boys. Our home used to be full of small moments like that. Simple, ordinary, but golden in memory. Back then, I thought love was enough to keep us close forever. But love, I've learned, changes shape over time. It bends with distance, and sometimes it breaks under silence. When Mark retired, everything slowed down. We thought it would be the start of our quiet years. We had plans to travel a little, visit the kids, maybe buy that small cabin near the lake we both loved. But plans, like people, can change suddenly. Mark's health started to fade not long after his 65th birthday. It began with little things, forgetting where he'd left his keys, getting tired after short walks. Then the doctor said it might be something more serious. I remember the drive home from the clinic that day. Neither of us said a word. The world outside looked the same, but inside, something shifted. The months that followed were heavy. Hospitals, pills, quiet nights. He tried to be brave, and I tried to be stronger than I felt. But there were moments when I'd catch him staring at old photos, his eyes distant, that broke me quietly inside. Our children came to visit when they could. David always brought paperwork for Mark to sign, things about the house, the will, the insurance. Emily brought flowers and homemade soup. Ryan brought noise and laughter, though I could tell it was forced sometimes. They loved their father. I know they did. But they had their own lives now. Careers, children, responsibilities. And I suppose in their minds that was enough. There were days I sat by Mark's bedside, holding his hand, whispering stories from when we were young. I'd remind him of the time we danced in the rain because our wedding song played on the radio. He'd smile faintly as if he could still hear it. One evening, he said something I'll never forget. He looked at me, his voice weak but his eyes still kind, and said, "Promise me you'll keep them together when I'm gone." I nodded. I meant it. I just didn't know how hard that promise would be to keep. When he passed away, it was a Thursday morning. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray that sits on your heart. I was there, holding his hand when he took his last breath. For a moment, the whole world stopped. Even the birds outside went quiet. I called the children. They came home one by one. David first, then Emily, then Ryan. There were hugs, tears, silence. But beneath it all, there was something else. Distance. Like invisible walls between us. In the days that followed, I busied myself with arrangements. Choosing the flowers, picking the suit he would wear, writing the small note that went inside the casket. Just a few words only he would understand. The house filled with visitors, neighbors, old friends, relatives we hadn't seen in years. Everyone said the same thing. He was such a good man. And he was. But I noticed how quickly people moved on to small talk. The weather, the food, the music. It's strange how, even in death, life keeps pushing forward. I wanted to sit with my children and talk, really talk. Not about the funeral, but about memories, about love, about us. But every time I tried, something got in the way. David was on his phone, handling important things. Emily was comforting guests. Ryan was outside, smoking, eyes red but defiant. We were together, but we weren't close. And deep inside, I could feel that promise I made to Mark trembling, fragile, ready to break. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat in the living room. The lamp was dim, his favorite chair was empty. And I whispered to the air, "I don't know how to keep them together, love. I don't know how. In the following days, I saw how each of my children handled grief differently. David turned practical, arranging finances, making lists, calling lawyers. Emily cried quietly, then distracted herself with cleaning and cooking. Ryan disappeared for hours, coming home smelling of cigarettes and sadness. And me? I tried to keep busy too. Because if I stopped moving, I knew the silence would swallow me whole. But the truth is, grief doesn't vanish when you ignore it. It just waits. It waits for the quiet moments, the empty chairs, the untouched coffee mug, the echo of laughter in rooms that used to be full. I started noticing how rarely my children looked at me when we spoke, how short their visits were, how quickly they slipped back into their own lives once the funeral was over. They loved me, yes, but they loved me from a distance. And I let them. Maybe I was afraid to hold them too tightly, or maybe I had forgotten how. It wasn't until a week later that I realized how much things had changed. The day was quiet. I was in the kitchen folding laundry when my phone lit up with that video, the one that showed them laughing, music in the background, a cake on the table. They looked happy, too happy, and for a moment, my heart cracked. But this isn't the part where anger grows. No, this is the part where understanding begins, slowly, painfully, but gently. Because that one moment, that video, became the door that opened everything that came next. I watched that video again the next morning. The sunlight spilled across the table where Mark used to sit, and the phone screen glowed in the quiet room. There they were, my children, smiling, arms around each other, music playing behind them. It looked like a birthday party, only it wasn't. At first I thought maybe it was an old clip, but then I saw the date stamp in the corner. It was the same day as the burial, the same hour even. Something inside me tightened. Not anger, not even disappointment, just a deep, aching question. When did we grow so far apart? I put the phone down and sat there, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I remembered their faces as children, sticky hands, messy hair, their laughter bouncing off these same walls. How did we get here? How did that laughter turn into distance? That day I made myself a cup of tea and tried to think clearly. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe someone had filmed the video earlier and only sent it then. Maybe grief made me see it differently. But the more I replayed it, the clearer it became. It wasn't an old recording. They were wearing the same clothes from the funeral morning. I recognized the restaurant behind them, the one near David's house. They had gone there together, without me. I took a deep breath, holding the warm mug between my palms. Mark would have told me to stay calm, to listen first, to understand before judging. So that's what I decided to do. Understand. That afternoon, David called. His voice was polite, careful. "Hi, Mom. How are you holding up?" I wanted to ask him why they were laughing while their father was being buried, but the words got stuck in my throat. Instead, I said, "I'm okay, dear, just tired." He talked about paperwork and insurance. I thanked him, though I barely heard half of what he said. Before hanging up, he added softly, "We'll check on you this weekend, okay?" I said, "All right," but when Saturday came, no one showed up. Days turned into weeks. The phone rarely rang. The house felt bigger than it used to. I filled my days with small things, watering the plants, sorting Mark's clothes, baking just enough bread for one. Grief has a rhythm of its own. At first, it's loud and everyone can hear it. Then it quiets until only you can feel it breathing beside you. Sometimes at night, I'd whisper to the empty room, "Did I do something wrong? Love, did I make them this distant? The silence never answered, but I think I already knew. Looking back, the signs were always there. When David got married, I tried to be the kind of mother-in-law who didn't interfere. I smiled when they bought a new house an hour away. I told myself, they need their space. When Emily moved to the city, chasing her art and her dreams, I was proud. But pride hides sadness well. I missed her laughter at the breakfast table, her singing in the hallway. And Ryan, my youngest, he stayed home the longest, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of love. But after his father fell ill, he changed too. He stopped making jokes, stopped bringing friends over. Some nights he wouldn't come home at all. I thought I was giving them freedom. Maybe I was giving them distance instead. One afternoon, Emily showed up. Her arms were full of groceries and flowers. "Mom," she said softly, "I thought you might need company." I smiled. "Always." We cooked together that evening. She talked about her work, her art studio, her friends. I listened, trying to hold on to the warmth of her voice. When we sat down to eat, I finally asked, "Emily, after the funeral, did you all go somewhere together?" Her fork paused midair. She looked down, avoiding my eyes. We went to Dad's favorite restaurant. David said we should have a meal together. He wanted to celebrate Dad's life, not just mourn. "Celebrate," I repeated softly. She nodded, almost whispering. "We thought about asking you, but you looked so tired. We didn't want to burden you." A lump formed in my throat. I forced a smile. "You didn't burden me, sweetheart. You never could." But inside, something fragile cracked. They thought they were protecting me by leaving me alone, and maybe in their eyes, that was kindness. But loneliness dressed as kindness still hurts. After Emily left that night, I sat by the window again. The rain had stopped, and the street lights cast golden circles on the wet pavement. I thought about what she said. Celebrate Dad's life. Maybe they meant well. Maybe they were trying to cope in their own way. But I also realized how differently we each carried grief. Mine was quiet, heavy, made of memories. Theirs was loud, rushed, pushed aside by the need to keep moving. I wondered if that's what adulthood does, teaches you to hurry past pain. Then came the phone call, the one I mentioned before. Not the one that changed everything yet. This was smaller, quieter. It was from Ryan. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice uncertain. "Just checking in." I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "How are you, sweetheart?" He hesitated. "I'm okay. Listen, Emily told me you saw that video." My chest tightened. "I did." He sighed. "Mom, don't be upset. We weren't partying. David said Dad wouldn't want us sitting around crying." "I know," I said gently. "It's all right." But he didn't believe me. "Mom, please don't think we didn't care. We did." "I know you did, honey." Silence lingered on the line. Then he whispered, "I miss him. I just don't know how to talk about it." That was the first time in months I heard truth in his voice. I wanted to reach through the phone and hold him. Instead, I said, "It's okay not to know how. Sometimes just missing someone is enough." He didn't answer, but I heard him exhale, a sound halfway between relief and sorrow. I started to think about what Mark had asked of me. Keep them together. Maybe it wasn't about forcing family dinners or holiday visits. Maybe it was about helping them find each other again, even through their own walls. So, I called David the next morning. I told him I wanted to have everyone over for dinner that Sunday. He hesitated before agreeing. "I'll try, Mom. We're busy with the kids' soccer games." "I understand. Just try." When Sunday came, Emily arrived first, carrying dessert. Ryan came late, smelling faintly of smoke, eyes tired. David didn't come at all. He sent a message instead. "Sorry, Mom, something came up. Next week, I promise." We ate in near silence. The food grew cold between us. Every few minutes, Emily tried to fill the air with small talk. Work, weather, anything. But Ryan barely touched his plate. After they left, I sat at the table alone, staring at 3 untouched glasses of lemonade. For the first time, I felt the full weight of the house pressing down. So much space, so little laughter. That night, I opened one of Mark's old notebooks. He used to write little notes, lists, thoughts, reminders. On one page, in his uneven handwriting, it said, "If they ever forget how to love each other, remind them how you loved them." I closed the notebook slowly. Those words stayed with me. Maybe the problem wasn't that they didn't care. Maybe they had simply forgotten how to show it. And maybe I had too. I decided then that I would not let our family fade quietly. I would do something. Something small, but real. The next morning, I picked up the phone. My hands trembled a little. It wasn't anger that guided me. It was love trying to find its way back. I called someone I hadn't spoken to in years, Mark's old best friend, Tom. He was a retired carpenter who used to help Mark fix things around the house. When he answered, his voice was warm and surprised. "Anne, it's been ages. How are you?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I've been better," I said with a soft laugh. "I need a little help, Tom." "Anything you know that?" "I want to fix up the old shed, turn it into something, maybe a place where the kids can gather." He paused. "You mean Mark's shed? The one he built himself?" "Yes, that one." There was a smile in his voice. "That's a fine idea, Anne. He'd like that." And that's when the plan began. A simple idea born out of emptiness to rebuild something physical in hopes of rebuilding something emotional. Over the next week, Tom came by every morning. We worked slowly, clearing dust, repairing old shelves, repainting the walls. Sometimes Emily stopped in to help, her hands streaked with color. Ryan dropped off coffee once or twice. Even David called to ask what we were doing. When I told him, he said, "That sounds nice, Mom. Maybe we'll come see it when it's done." It wasn't much, but it was a start. Every stroke of paint felt like a quiet apology to the past. Every nail a promise to the future. Still, there were moments of doubt. Nights when I sat alone in that half-finished shed, listening to the echo of hammers and my own heartbeat. I wondered if any of it would matter, if they would ever come together again, not out of duty, but out of love. Then, one evening, as the sky turned orange, I found one of Mark's old recordings, a home video from years ago. The kids were small, laughing, chasing each other around that same shed. Mark's voice was behind the camera, saying, "Someday you'll all be grown, but promise me you'll still come home." I smiled through tears. Maybe this was how I could remind them. That night, I decided what the shed would become. Not storage, not a workshop, but a space filled with memories, a place to remember him together. And that decision led to the call that truly changed everything. The shed smelled of sawdust and old summers. Light from the doorway spilled across the floorboards, and I stood there, brush in hand, looking at the color on the walls. Soft blue, the same shade as Mark's favorite shirt. Tom had gone home for the day, leaving his tools neatly stacked. The place was almost finished. Clean, bright, simple. All it needed was a reason for the children to walk through that door. I sat on the small stool Mark used to build birdhouses on and closed my eyes. The quiet pressed in. I could almost hear his voice saying, "Go on, Annie, don't wait for perfect." So I took a deep breath, wiped my hands on my apron, and reached for the phone again. The call I was about to make scared me, but sometimes love feels like that, a trembling act of courage. The phone rang twice. "Hello?" A woman's voice answered. It was Sarah, David's wife. "Hi, Sarah. It's Mom." "Oh, hi. How are you?" She sounded surprised, maybe even nervous. "I'm fine, dear. I was wondering if you and David could come over this weekend. I'd like to show you something." There was a pause. "I'm not sure. The boys have a game Saturday, and David's been buried in work." "That's all right," I said gently. "Any day you can manage. Just bring yourselves." She hesitated again, then sighed. "I'll talk to him." "Thank you," I whispered. "Tell him his dad would be happy to see you here." When I hung up, my heart pounded like I'd run a mile. That was the first call, but not the last. Next, I called Emily. She answered on the second ring. "Mom, everything okay?" "Yes, darling, everything's fine. I'm planning something small. I'd love for you to be here Saturday evening." Her voice softened. "Of course. What is it?" "Just come," I said with a small smile, "and bring your camera." Then I called Ryan. He didn't pick up at first, but he texted, "At work, what's up?" I typed back, "Need help moving a few things Saturday." He replied with one word, "Sure." It wasn't much, but it was enough. Saturday came with bright sunlight and a nervous flutter in my chest. I spent the day arranging things inside the shed, old photos on the wall, Mark's tools on one side, and in the center, a small wooden box filled with notes he had written through the years. I called it the memory box. Each note held a piece of him, a grocery list with a tiny heart drawn next to milk, a reminder to check the car tires, a line that simply said, "Tell Anne she's beautiful today." I wiped my eyes, set the box on the table, and whispered, "They're coming, love. I hope this is the right way." Around 4 o'clock, I heard tires crunch on the driveway, Ryan's old truck. He stepped out, wearing his faded jacket, hair a little messy. "Hey, Mom." I smiled. "Right on time." He looked around the yard. "Tom told me you've been fixing up the shed. Can I see?" "Soon," I said. "Help me carry a few chairs first." As we worked, I noticed how carefully he avoided my eyes. There was still that restlessness in him, like he wanted to be anywhere but here. When we finished, he leaned against the doorway and asked, "Who else is coming?" "Your brother and sister," I said. He groaned quietly. "Are you sure about that? David's probably got spreadsheets to finish." I chuckled. "Maybe, but he'll come." I wasn't as sure as I sounded. By 6, Emily arrived, carrying a casserole in her camera bag. She kissed my cheek and hugged Ryan tightly, surprising him. "You smell like paint," she teased. He laughed, the first real laugh I'd heard from him in months. Then headlights swept across the yard. David's car. He stepped out, adjusting his jacket, phone still in hand. Sarah followed, holding a covered dish. For a second, the air felt awkward, like strangers meeting at a family reunion. I walked toward them, smiling. "Thank you for coming." David nodded. "Of course, Mom. The place looks good." He glanced at the shed. "So this is what you've been working on?" "Yes," I said softly. "Your father's shed. Come inside." They stepped in one by one. The room smelled of fresh paint and cedar. The evening light filtered through the window, landing on the table with the memory box. Photos of our family lined the walls, birthdays, vacations, messy smiles. For a while, no one spoke, only the sound of the wind outside. Then I said quietly, "Your father built this shed when you were children. Do you remember?" Ryan nodded. "He taught me to hammer nails right over there." Emily smiled, "And he carved my name on that beam." She pointed to the corner where faint letters were still visible. David looked around, his expression softening. "I haven't been in here since high school." I walked to the table and opened the small wooden box. Inside, folded neatly, were the notes. I handed one to each of them. David unfolded his and read aloud. "Remember to laugh. Numbers don't keep you warm at night." Ryan's note said, "Take care of your mother when I can't." Emily's read, "Never stop making things beautiful." Silence filled the shed. Emily's eyes shimmered. Ryan looked down, jaw tight. David swallowed hard, his phone now forgotten in his pocket. I said softly, "He wrote those years ago. I found them in his drawer. I thought maybe you should have them." Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then David whispered, "Mom, I'm sorry." I blinked. "For what?" "For not being here more, for the restaurant that night. It wasn't a party, I promise. It was just us trying to remember him the way he was before the hospital. I didn't think you'd want to come." "I know," I said quietly. "Emily told me." Ryan spoke next, voice low. "I was angry at him for leaving. I drank too much that night. I didn't know what else to do." I reached out and took his hand. "It's all right, sweetheart. Grief makes us clumsy." Emily wiped her cheeks. "I should have called you the next morning. I'm sorry too." I looked at each of them. "You don't have to apologize. You just have to remember him, and each other." For the next hour, we stayed in that little shed, sharing stories. David told them about the time he and Mark fixed the leaky roof and ended up drenched in rain. Emily laughed about how Dad used to sneak chocolate before dinner. Ryan remembered falling asleep on his lap during late-night movies. Their voices filled the room, soft at first, then lighter, warmer. Laughter crept in, hesitant but real. I stood back, watching them, my heart swelling with something I hadn't felt in months: hope. When the rain stopped, we moved outside. The air smelled clean, the grass shining under the porch light. I brought out candles and placed them along the path. "Dad loved candlelight," Emily said, lighting one. "Yes," I smiled. "He said it made ordinary moments special." We stood there, each holding a candle, the glow reflecting in their faces. For the first time since the funeral, we were quiet together, not from sadness, but from peace. Later, inside the house, we sat at the dining table, the same table that had stood empty for so long. Sarah helped set out food. The children talked, really talked, about their own kids, their work, old memories. It felt almost normal. At one point, David turned to me and said, "Mom, maybe we can make this a thing, coming here once a month. Family dinner." I smiled so hard, my cheeks hurt. "I'd like that." Emily nodded. "And maybe next time we can bring the kids. They should see the shed too." Ryan leaned back in his chair, grinning. "I can barbecue. Dad would have loved that." I laughed softly. He would. And just like that, the promise I made to Mark to keep them together didn't feel impossible anymore. When everyone left that night, the house didn't feel so big. Their laughter lingered in the halls, like the echo of a song that didn't want to end. I walked out to the shed once more. The candles outside had burned low, tiny flames dancing in the breeze. I sat on the stool, folded my hands, and whispered, We did it, love. You'd be proud. A small tear slipped down my cheek, but it wasn't from sadness. It was from gratitude. For love that bends but doesn't break, for family that finds its way home, and for one simple call that started everything. The next morning, the house felt alive again. When I walked into the kitchen, there were coffee cups left on the counter, a half-empty dish of casserole, a jacket hanging over a chair. For the first time since Mark's funeral, I didn't hurry to clean. I left everything as it was. It felt like proof that laughter had visited this house again. The air still smelled of rain and candles. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window. Outside, the shed stood quietly in the sunlight, fresh paint gleaming. The little blue building looked peaceful now, not like a place of work, but a place of memory. And I thought of Mark's handwriting on that note. If they ever forget how to love each other, remind them how you loved them. Maybe I had finally done that, not with lectures or guilt, but with space, warmth, and one brave phone call. Later that day, David called. He rarely called in the morning, so I answered quickly. "Mom," he said, his voice soft, "thank you for yesterday. I didn't realize how much I missed being here." My throat tightened. "You're always welcome, dear." He continued, "I talked to Emily and Ryan. We think we should help you fix the garden. Maybe plant something near Dad's shed. Would you like that?" I smiled. "I'd love that." He laughed a little. "Good. Emily says she'll pick the flowers, Ryan will build the fence, and I'll supervise like Dad used to." That made me laugh too. It was such a simple thing, but in that laughter, something in me healed. The next weekend, they all came back. This time not out of obligation, but out of choice. The yard was full of movement again. Emily knelt in the soil, her hands covered in dirt and joy. Ryan hammered wooden posts, calling for measurements he never quite got right. David carried trays of seedlings, explaining how deep to plant them, and I stood by with lemonade and quiet pride. The neighbors must have heard our laughter because someone called out from across the fence, "It's nice to hear that sound again, Anne." I waved and smiled, the sun warm on my face. As the day went on, we built more than a garden. We built little bridges back to each other. Between shovels and jokes, small confessions slipped out. Ryan told me about his drinking, how he had been ashamed after the funeral, and how he thought staying away would spare me disappointment. I placed a hand on his arm and said, "You can always come home, no matter how far you wander." He nodded, eyes glistening, and whispered, "Thanks, Mom." Emily talked about feeling torn between her art and her family, always worrying that we saw her dreams as selfish. I told her, "You were born to create beauty. Your father and I always knew that." She smiled then, tears shining in her eyes. And David, always the steady one, admitted he didn't know how to grieve except through action. He said, "I thought if I fixed everything, it wouldn't hurt." I told him, "Sometimes you don't need to fix things, son. Sometimes you just need to feel them." He nodded slowly, like he was finally allowing himself to. By the time evening came, the garden was planted, rows of flowers and herbs, a small bench under the old oak tree. We placed a small wooden sign near the shed that read, "Mark's Corner, built with love." We stood there, side by side, hands still dirty, hearts lighter than before. Emily took a photo of us all, the sunset behind us, golden and soft. Later, she printed that photo and placed it inside the shed, right next to the one of our younger selves. 2 pictures, years apart, Same faces, same love. After everyone left that evening, I sat on the porch steps with a blanket around my shoulders. The stars came out slowly. I thought about forgiveness, how it never arrives all at once, but piece by piece, like dawn. I had spent weeks feeling abandoned, hurt by that video. But now, looking back, I saw it differently. They weren't celebrating carelessly. They were holding on to what little joy they could find, trying to fill the silence that death leaves behind. And maybe that was okay. Mark used to say, "Grief and love are twins. Where you find one, the other isn't far." Now, I understood. A few days later, Emily dropped by again. She carried a framed photo and a new candle. "I thought this could stay in the shed," she said, "for Dad." We walked there together. The scent of paint had faded. It smelled like earth and pine now. She placed the photo on the shelf beside the memory box and lit the candle. We stood silently for a moment, watching the small flame flicker. Then she said, "You know, Mom, we didn't just lose Dad. We almost lost you, too. I'm sorry for that." I turned to her and smiled. "You never lost me, sweetheart. I was just waiting for you to come home." She hugged me then, long and tight. In her arms, I felt the same warmth I used to feel when she was a little girl, climbing into my lap after a nightmare. That night, Ryan called. "Mom," he said, "I've been thinking, maybe I could move back for a while, help around the house, keep you company." My heart lifted. "You'd really do that?" "Yeah, I think it's time I slowed down a bit. Besides, the city's too noisy. I miss the quiet." I smiled. "Well, there's always a room here with your name on it." He laughed. "You're sure you want me around every day?" I laughed too. "I'll risk it." The days that followed were soft, steady, full of small, healing rituals. Ryan helped me paint the kitchen cabinets. David called every few days just to chat. Emily sent photos of the flowers blooming in the garden. Each message, each visit, felt like a thread being tied back together. We still missed Mark, of course, but the grief no longer felt sharp. It had become part of the rhythm of our days, like the ticking of the kitchen clock. Sometimes when I sat alone, I'd still feel the emptiness creep in. But instead of fighting it, I'd close my eyes and breathe through it, letting the memory of his voice fill the room. "Go on, Annie. You're doing fine." And I was. By early summer, Sunday dinners had become a new tradition. Every week, the house filled with footsteps, voices, children's laughter. Sarah brought her boys. Emily brought homemade bread. Ryan grilled outside. The air smelled of garlic and warm bread, of life continuing. Sometimes, after dinner, the grandchildren would run toward the shed, eager to see Grandpa Mark's corner. They'd open the memory box and ask questions about the notes inside. David would kneel beside them and explain who their grandfather was, how kind he had been, how he built things with his hands and his heart. Those were the moments that made every tear worth it. Watching the next generation learn about love through stories. One Sunday night, after everyone had gone, I stepped outside again. The moon hung low, silver over the garden. The flowers swayed gently, and the shed glowed softly under the porch light. I walked inside, sat on the stool, and whispered into the quiet. "We're all right now, love. We really are." I opened the memory box and added one more note, my own. It said, "We're learning to love the way you taught us, gently, even through loss." I folded it, placed it among his, and closed the lid. For the first time in months, my heart felt whole. Life settled into a peaceful rhythm. Some days were still hard. Grief doesn't disappear completely, but now it lived beside joy instead of pushing it away. I began teaching myself small things again: how to bake new recipes, how to tend the garden, how to rest without guilt. And sometimes when the family came over, I'd catch them laughing, teasing one another, and I'd think of that terrible video, how it once broke me, and how now it didn't hurt at all. Because I saw what I couldn't see then. They weren't partying. They were trying, in their own imperfect way, to keep light alive when the world had gone dark. I forgave them. Fully. Quietly, completely. And in forgiving them, I forgave myself for all the times I had chosen silence over reaching out. One afternoon, David brought a small wooden plaque he'd made. He handed it to me with a shy smile. I thought this could go inside the shed. It read, "This family stands because two people loved enough to build it." I touched the carving gently. "That's beautiful, David." He shrugged. "Dad would have done it better." I shook my head. "He'd say it's perfect." We hung it inside together. The shed, once a place of loneliness, had become our family's heart. As the seasons turned, I realized something simple yet profound. Every family breaks a little. Every love story has its silences. But what matters is not the cracks. It's what you choose to fill them with: anger or understanding, distance or forgiveness. I chose forgiveness, and it gave me back everything I thought I'd lost. Sometimes I still stand by the window with Mark's old coffee mug, watching the sun climb over the garden. The steam rises, the light shifts, and the world feels kind again. I talk to him quietly, like he's just in the next room. I tell him, "Your children are okay. They laugh again. They take care of each other. You'd be proud." And maybe, in the stillness, I can almost hear him laugh. That low, warm sound that used to fill this house. It's faint, but it's enough. The house wakes up slowly these days. I like that. No rush, no noise. Just the hum of the kettle, the creak of the porch, the whisper of wind through the trees. I pour my tea, walk outside and sit by the garden that now blooms brighter than I ever dreamed. The flowers sway in the sunlight, each one planted by loving hands. David's steady rose and marigolds, Emily's wild bursts of daisies, Ryan's crooked little fence holding them all together. It's not perfect, but it's ours. From the porch, I can see the shed, Mark's corner. It stands quietly at the edge of the yard, its blue paint softening with time. Sometimes the grandchildren run in and out of it, leaving muddy footprints on the floor. I never mind. That shed was never meant to be spotless. It was meant to be loved. I often think about how easily we lose sight of one another when grief or pride steps in. It doesn't take much. A misunderstanding, a missed call, a harsh word said too quickly. And before you know it, silence grows where laughter used to be. For months, I thought I had lost my family for good, but now I know they were never gone. They were just finding their way through the dark, same as I was. We were all hurting, just in different languages. And maybe that's what love really is. Not always understanding right away, but choosing to stay, to listen, to try again. Sometimes I still talk to Mark when I'm out here. I tell him what's new, what the children are doing, what the grandchildren have learned. I tell him how the family laughs again, how Sunday dinners have become noisy and joyful. I imagine him smiling that quiet, proud smile of his, the one that said, "You've done well, Annie." And every time I whisper his name, I don't feel the sharp ache I used to. It feels softer now, like a memory resting in sunlight, the kind that warms instead of wounds. Last week, I found the old photo album tucked behind a drawer. Pictures of our early years, the wedding, the first home, the children with jam on their faces. I sat on the floor, turning each page slowly, and I realized that our life wasn't made of big moments. It was made of the quiet ones. Breakfast on the porch, laughter after storms, hands held through sickness and health. Those were the pieces that built our love. And maybe in the end, that's what family really is. 1,000 small acts of staying. Even when things break. Even when it's easier to walk away.
I've learned something through all this. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't erase what happened or the hurt that came with it. It just means choosing peace over pain. It's setting down the weight you were never meant to carry. That night, when I watched that video, when I thought they were celebrating while their father was being buried, I could have chosen to hold that bitterness forever. But I didn't. And because I let go, I made room for love to come back in. Now, when I see that same video, I don't cry. I see young faces trying to be brave. I see laughter that was holding up something heavy. I see love, messy and misunderstood, but love all the same. The sun is setting now. The light spills across the garden, turning everything gold. The air smells like lavender and fresh soil. Somewhere down the road, a dog barks, and I can hear children laughing. Life continues. Simple, quiet, beautiful. I close my eyes and take a long breath. The grief, the guilt, the loneliness, they've softened into something gentler now. Something like gratitude. If Mark were here, I'd tell him, we did it. We kept the family together. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't perfect, but it's real. And that's enough. Before I go inside, I whisper one last thing to the evening air. If anyone ever hears my story, I hope they remember this. Families don't stay whole because they never break. They stay whole because someone chooses to keep reaching out even when it hurts. That's what I did. And it saved us. So tonight, as I close the door, I leave the light on in the shed. Not because someone's working there, but because love still lives there. Quiet, steady, forgiving, and bright enough to guide us home.